Guess what, ladies and gentlemen? Guess what? Document drop. Requesting of evidence by the defense in the Idaho Ford tragedy. Guess what? It's sealed. Imagine that. I'm just going to call it the Idaho Way. Trial before evidence. I'm A.R. Hayes. I'm an ex-convict. Just here today, shivering cold in the what's supposed to be warm Nevada desert. Windy, and cold. But nothing in Idaho seems to be changing when it comes to the prosecution's case against Bryan Kohberger, the way it's been handled in the courts. It's all sealed, everybody. Sealed. You can't see a word. You don't even know what they're requesting or what they're fighting for in their 11th motion to the court for evidence. I absolutely understand through my experiences in life that this is what defense lawyers do. They do have to battle back and forth on many occasions with the prosecution to get the evidence that they're looking for to be able to build a defense for their client. That's not new. It's not unusual. But this one, Idaho, Bryan Kohberger, quadruple homicide case that took the lives of the beautiful Xana, Maddie, Kaylee, and Ethan. It just never stops and it never makes sense. It just keeps plowing away. Not long ago, if you remember, the IGG information was deemed to be put in front of that judge in chambers on the on-camera review so he could make the determination of what information would be turned over to the defense. December 1st. We've heard nothing about anything being released or whether even what was provided to the judge included anything from the FBI that would have any meaning at all to this case. Because if you remember, they stated they destroyed their notes and the different pieces that they utilized to actually build the family tree with the IGG. It's so mentally racking that you even begin to get confused in your own thoughts because you think you understand why and how that all worked out, but then you really think about it and you lose little triggering moments in your thoughts because it doesn't make sense. It doesn't add up. You're doing an investigation and you're considered to be the Federal Bureau of Investigations. You are almost the top of the top in this world. You don't even keep your notes. You don't think it's necessary to keep the evidence that you're building just in case there is a capital murder trial. Maybe the prosecution would need that to show how they got the results that they got. Maybe it's not even going to be utilized in the actual building of the case, but guess what? In the courts nowadays, you never know what a judge is going to determine to be an integral part of a case that the defense has every right to have in their possession as evidence so that they could build a defense. That's what America is about. It's fair and equality when it comes to a justice system that everybody stands on a fair, flat platform of innocent until proven guilty, and you have the right to build a defense for yourself against any accuser or crime brought against you. I'm sorry, I was about ready to bust out laughing. I really was. I was going to bust out laughing after saying that, but I know this is real and true. This is what our country is supposed to be, and this is a man's life. So how do you laugh? How do you joke about that? it's sickening that the defense, who supposedly in most people's minds and through the mainstream media's whole dictation of this account and what everybody and the prosecutors are telling the families, we got the most solid of cases, and look at all the mountain of evidence that we provided them. Mountains and mountains of evidence. And we are so ready to go to trial. We want it on this day and this summer. We're ready to do this. But you still haven't even turned over all the evidence that the defense feels like they need to defend their client. They would not still be motioning the court for an 11th time unless they felt as though there was a part of this big puzzle that you are not providing. You're not providing something that somewhere within the defense's counsel or experts, they're trying to get information so that they could put their puzzle pieces together. That's what it is about when it comes to prosecuting an actual defendant within an American justice system. I don't know if that's one piece of evidence that the defense could literally get an expert to come in and debunk something that a state's expert is putting this whole puzzle together on, and the defense counsel is able to tear that down and make it all make sense to the point that now it actually shows a positive for the defendant rather than another ding of circumstantial evidence. That's the key, ladies and gentlemen. That's the key to a trial. You have to attack circumstantial evidence to flip the script of what the prosecution is trying to utilize it for to convict your client. Let's just kind of go through a realm where we portray some circumstantial evidence that, if flipped, could actually take the negative spin on the defendant, Brian Koberger, and just utilize his nil or nothing to be displayed within the courtroom to convict him. If experts are able to get on the stand and discuss phone pings to the point that it proves there is no substantial way of putting the defendant, the suspect, within a certain area around that home at any point in time, it would have to be a radiused area, not a specific, a radiused area. Well, now that deems that he may never have actually been near the home. That puts a different spin in many of the thoughts that people have when they feel as though statements like by Steve G that's promoted through mainstream media that he connected to the actual Wi-Fi of the home to be spun around by experts and the actual reading of everything going on, and it states, oh no, he most times was just somewhere within 10 to 15 miles of the home. Well, that's a big difference. It's a big difference. Makes a big difference in the presentation at trial of a defense. If I can take a said order on Amazon and prove, yes, I made that order. It was 8 months prior to the crime actually happening. It was shipped to a completely different state all the way across the country. And guess what? When you utilize the search warrant of the parent's home, you confiscated that very purchased and ordered weapon in that search. Nothing came of that weapon that was tied back to the crime scene in Idaho and legitimately there is nothing that could prove that that purchased item, a K-bar, if that's what it truly is, ever left the home in Pennsylvania to go to a Washington state apartment. Prove that it did when there's substantial evidence that it just might not have. I can order something and it stays at my parents' stable forever home when I go off to college to live in an apartment that is not my forever stable home with even my normal address that my mail is sent to. It's just my place of living while going to college. Many of us do that. We still have our parents' address on the majority of our accounts, even our credit card bills and everything of that nature. I mean, heck, just not long after the crime is when he finally changed over his registration to his car because he had to. Not because he chose to, he had to by law. He followed the law. There are always important things, ladies and gentlemen, that when evidence is being sought by the defense and they're motioning to the court for certain evidence, there's a reason behind that madness. They're not trying to stall a case within the courts based off of motions for evidence. They are requesting that evidence so that they can get their experts onto that evidence in building the puzzles and putting the pieces together for a defense of their client. And it might be that single piece of circumstantial evidence that is not being turned over, that's being requested, that could make that puzzle flow to show a much different picture than this scattered puzzle over here that the prosecution is trying to use bits and pieces of circumstantial evidence. They're leaving them disconnected so that for a jury and people that are listening to everything being presented, A doesn't line up to B, B doesn't line up to C, C doesn't go with D. They try to keep it scattered so that they could utilize each circumstantial piece of evidence in its own way to build a case against the defendant. This doesn't have to fully make sense. The defense, to be able to overcome everything that the prosecution has had from the very minute of arrest, you have to realize the prosecution has the upper hand from the minute of the arrest. The PCA that's written to get the arrest warrant, probable cause affidavit, not confirmed, not real and true evidence. It's probable, theory-based, what the officers feel that they could present against somebody to get an arrest. It's not corroborated. It's not confirmed. The data has not come back to legitimize that, but that's utilized to get the arrest. Prosecution's first strength within the case. 2, instead of actually having to go to a pretrial hearing where the defense has the opportunity to not only see the case being presented by the prosecution, they have the ability to defend it and combat it. No. We're going to go to a grand jury and get our indictment because there's no defense. I could do a grand jury indictment if you gave me the ability. I could get in front of many of you and speak upon a case and make many valid points that you're going to indict a defendant. As long as I do it within a realm that I'm not bullying you into your decision or I'm not just throwing false things in front of you, I can help guide you to an indictment. Because guess what? An indictment is not a jury trial. So it's not the all said and done being of that defendant. So bring me some evidence, you'll get your indictment, and then we'll move forward in the process. Realize, ladies and gentlemen, when that grand jury indictment was gotten, when they secured the grand jury indictment, indicting Brian Koberger on quadruple homicide, where he would now sit in a jail cell and await through the entire process to go to trial. They didn't even have all of the search warrants and information and evidence back as of yet. They didn't have the evidence from the FBI back as of yet. They didn't have the order of the Amazon back as of yet. So many things were not back. So it should give you the idea that what was presented to a grand jury is not good enough for a jury trial. Just make sure you keep that in mind. To secure a grand jury indictment is nothing compared to getting a guilty verdict at trial. But the prosecution has the upper hand all the way through, including if we have to throw the actual wood onto the already burning fire. You have to include the fact they know what evidence they have. They know what they're withholding. They know what they've turned over. And they know the whole reasoning if they've held something back, or they didn't go test certain DNAs, or there were different things that happened in their investigation that were not included to go to the defense. They know the reasoning why. And they're going to be protective of that reasoning, even when the defense is attacking. That's why these motions have to be filed. They haven't turned it over for a reason. And I'm kind of getting sick and tired of hearing, well, we don't have that. We didn't think that would be necessary. We didn't keep any notes. We're waiting on another agency to provide that to us. We're this, we're that. We just don't need it for this trial. Yes, you do, because the defense needs that information. And it's frustrating. Frustrating because I've sat there in that defendant's chair and I've had to go through these battles to get what you deem to be not that important of evidence brought into an actual case because it helped me as a defendant put up a defense. That's why you don't want to provide it. You withhold it because it helps the defendant. Doesn't help your case, otherwise it'd be thrown in there in a heartbeat. Trust me. In cases like the Idaho 4, all that powerful evidence is slammed down in front of that defense the minute that arraignment and everything is happening, and they know they're going to begin putting the pressure on that defendant. Hey, you're either going to confess, you're going to plead out to this, or look at everything we got, you're going to lose the trial. And guess what? This is a death penalty case. Not only are you going to lose your innocence in life, you're going to lose your life altogether. And this is why. Here's everything we have. So it should tell you, if it's nonstop requesting for more evidence, that means what's being turned over to the defense is not satisfactory to what the experts behind the counsel are saying they need. It's not the lawyers that are always requesting certain pieces of evidence. They have legal experts and forensic experts and experts all behind them, guiding them in what they need to help defend their client. This is what I need to be able to analyze this. This is what I need to be able to corroborate this. I need these things in regards to DNA so I can make sure it all fell in the right way. Instead, they're having to continuously request those items while the prosecution can sit back, put their hands behind their head, and say, you know what? We really didn't like how that defense expert spoke on the stand during a pretty important IGG testimony. So why don't we send the FBI over to her home because we feel as though she was really sending some texts that were going against her testimony. Let's go rattle her cage a little bit. This should be fun. It's walking a fine line of, crossing that line of maybe witness tampering. Maybe it's a little bit of witness, intimidation. But don't worry about it. We got this locked up because we'll just withhold this. We'll seal that. We'll contradict ourselves all the way through this just to where none of it makes sense until we get to trial. And they don't have the evidence they need to battle this. This is the Idaho way, ladies and gentlemen. But the sad thing about it is it's becoming more rampant in other areas, and it's becoming more visual to people like you or I. It's just whether people are willing to stand up and say, look, whether he's guilty or not, we have to do this the right way. We have these systems set the way they are for a reason. We need to follow it. If there's a chance that evidence is here that the defense needs, and they are withholding it, we need to put the pressure that gets turned over. Full transparency when a man's life is on the line in a case that they claim, oh, this is said and done. We got everything we need. You can tear down the crime scene. You can do everything. We're even patting the families of the victims on the back saying, we've got this. We got this covered. Ignore the fact that we're hiding evidence, or we're withholding evidence, or we just don't actually have it. Ignore that fact, and just know we've got this locked up. At what point does the pressure get thrown back onto the court system to the point that we say, stop worrying about the cameras in the courtroom, stop worrying about all this outside social media stuff, focus in on what you're supposed to be doing, and that's ensuring that every step of this case is done true and fair to the justice system and the laws. Focus less on what's on camera, focus more what's happening in your courtroom that's putting a man's life at risk that has not been proven guilty as of yet. Could he be guilty? I personally have expressed my opinion. I don't think so. But I've also very much expressed my opinion. It's based off the fact none of us actually know, based off of everything being sealed and out there, what the heck's going on, who's being hidden, who's not. Produce it and let's move forward. But until this evidence that the defense is clearly seeking is gotten, this should never see a trial. It should never go to trial until it's fully prepared to go to trial. And I mean, the defense has had every opportunity to prepare themselves. They already had to waive their right to a speedy trial, and many have questioned whether that's the prosecution's and the court's fault, not his. I mean, if you don't have all the evidence to build a case for yourself, why would you take it to trial knowing that you have the death penalty on the line? Why would you do that? He's not incompetent. You have to put the brakes on. You got to slow everything down and say, let's get this into focus here. I'm looking for certain evidence to help build my case. If you don't have it, just clearly state you don't have it. But, it's really also funny to watch how long it takes the prosecution to file their return motions against the defense motions, their objections. Yet when it's going in their way, they're quick. They're ready to, that dismissal, that got thrown out. We've overlooked that. Well, then the defense files for the whole new interlock, everything of that nature. And what happens? That prosecution's right on it, filing their objection. Filing the objection. And that's fine and dandy, but just be that quick in actually turning over the evidence, or at least trying to turn over the evidence the defense is requesting. Let's get this to trial. Let's get it there. Let's get it in the public view. Let's get everything opened up for everybody to see. Let's stop sealing it, and let's get it to trial, and let's get this on the road so either an innocent man can get his butt out of jail and go home, or you solidly lock down a guilty conviction. We go through the appeal process. He gets his sentence that we all know is in place. And at that point, I would have to come out and absolutely apologize for all of my opinions in regards to innocence. I'd have to be one of the first ones to come out and say I was wrong. But until that prosecution makes the bold statement that they're actually going to fight fair and they're going to let's allow him to build a case to defend himself. Let's give him the evidence he's requesting, or at least make the statement that they don't have it, so the defense then could build their defense on them not actually having the evidence. And that's okay, too. But let's get moving forward before this case doesn't even see a courtroom until 2028 because you guys are bickering over the evidence for the next 4 years. There's still a lot to go before this can go to trial, and summer's not that far away, ladies and gentlemen. It's not that far away. And we're still motioning for more evidence. And this may just actually come back to the IGG. They may not have gotten what many think that they actually got in all of that IGG work. It may have been a single piece of paper that had a couple of lines drawn on it that said Koberger at the top. Who knows? We're not going to know until it's unsealed and we move forward and both sides have prepared their cases. But I'm sticking to my new saying. Trial and death penalty before evidence turned over. It's the Idaho way. I'm A.R. Hayes, Convict's Thoughts. It was great talking to you again and hope to see you again soon. Have a great night.